Hello. Once again, over the last few days, we've seen escalating tensions in the Middle East between Israel and Iran. This started on the night of the 12th of June, when Israel launched Operation Rising Lion. The first question I want to answer in light of this attack is, why has Israel attacked now? This answer is multifaceted and is influenced by Netanyahu's own personal political incentives and the current status of Iran's nuclear industry. With Israel's attack on the night of the 12th of June, afterwards we inevitably saw an Iranian attack in response. This unfolded in multiple stages throughout the day on Friday the 13th of June. By the evening on Friday the 13th, Israel had once again launched more strikes against Iran, and it was at this point that the previous occurrences of de-escalation, as we saw in April 2024 and October 2024, were clearly not to be repeated this time. Iran then announced the launch of Operation True Promise 3, and this made it clear that Israel and Iran are now in a state of all-out war. No war declarations will likely be made, but the actions that the two countries are undertaking is all that's necessary. So in today's episode, I'm going to explore what have been the key events of the last few days and what damage has been done. Let's dive in. So as I discussed, the escalation here started with Operation Rising Lion that was undertaken by the Israelis on the night of June 12th. The reasoning behind this, as I stated, is multifaceted. Firstly, this attack came in the aftermath of a ruling by the International Atomic Energy Agency that deemed that Iran wasn't sticking to its nuclear obligations for the first time in over 20 years. Iran also recently announced that it would build and activate a third nuclear enrichment site within the country. At their currently existing uranium enrichment facilities in Natanz and Fordo, the Iranians have been digging tunnels under both. Iran also reportedly possesses advanced centrifuges and has been expanding the number of centrifuges it possesses, which could facilitate the increased enrichment of uranium. The ruling by the International Atomic Energy Agency also reported that Iran possessed enriched uranium to 60%, with the potential to make 9 nuclear bombs if enriched to the 90% grade required. Israel also stated that Iran has enough material to make 15 nuclear bombs in a matter of days, but this could be Israel attempting to back up the fact that it attacked Iran at this time. With Iranian nuclear ambitions seen by Israel as a threat to its very survival, this is one of the contributing reasons as to why they launched Operation Rising Lion. In the aftermath of this Israeli attack, the International Atomic Energy Agency reported no increase in radiation levels, and the chief stated his readiness to travel to Iran to assess the situation and the damage against nuclear facilities. But while bombs are flying, this is very unlikely. During this operation, the Israeli Defense Forces targeted some key Iranian military leaders. It was confirmed that they killed many of them, including the Commander-in-Chief of the IRGC, the Chief of Staff of Iran's Armed Forces, the Commander of Iran's Air Force, and many nuclear scientists, including the former head of Iran's Atomic Energy Organization. Now, this rhetoric produced from Israel and Netanyahu on Iranian progress towards a nuclear bomb isn't new. Since 1996, Netanyahu has stated numerous times that Iran has made 90% progress towards a nuclear weapon. When this ruling by the International Atomic Energy Agency was released, this gave Netanyahu a reason to launch such an attack. However, there is also a second potential reason here behind why Israel could have launched this attack now. Netanyahu was actually incentivized to start war on a personal level. On the 11th of June, the Knesset undertook a vote to dissolve Parliament. So why did this occur? Well, around a year ago, a change in Israel's Supreme Court stated that ultra-Orthodox Jews could be eligible for compulsory military service. Prior to this, these men were exempt if they were studying Jewish holy books. With this change, Netanyahu was expected to lose these parties in his coalition, and so with a vote to dissolve Parliament, his position as Prime Minister looked under threat. With his personal career hanging in the balance and the potential that he would have to face his corruption charges, Netanyahu had to formulate a deal with these parties. But the far-right members in Netanyahu's coalition also wish for an aggressive policy of war towards Iran. And so, for Netanyahu's individual power and control over Israel and to maintain his coalition, he had no choice but to enter into war with Iran if he wanted his own career to survive. This was then seen in how fragile his coalition remains, in that the vote passed with 61 votes against dissolving Parliament, which is an exact majority in the 120-seat Israeli Parliament. So the wider world now watched on as this conflict with Iran risked escalating rapidly. And this became a reality when we saw Iran respond. On the morning of Friday the 13th, Iran retaliated against Israel, first launching 100 drones. After the drones in the morning came ballistic missiles in the afternoon. We then saw Trump take to Truth Social, and the US-Iran nuclear deal that has been under discussion for the last few months then entered the picture. Trump stated that he gave Iran, quote, chance after chance, but that they couldn't get a deal done. The biggest roadblock here was the difference in nuclear enrichment. Trump wanted zero enrichment in Iran. However, a recent deal with Russia would have seen a plan to build 8 nuclear power plants in Iran, and this would at least require some enrichment. Now, Trump was open to have Iran importing enriched uranium that would adhere to the terms that Trump would have hoped to have set under a US-Iran nuclear deal, but Iran wanted to maintain a level of enriched uranium within country, so they weren't reliant upon other countries to receive this supply. A reason for this is, firstly, if the US was to back out of the deal at any time, Iran wanted to ensure that it could supply itself with enough enriched uranium to continue to function. Also, the Iranians are currently embroiled in an economic and energy crisis, and nuclear power would go a long way to addressing this. But despite the news that Russia would plan to build 8 nuclear power plants within Iran, nuclear power plants aren't easy to build. The Chinese are some of the quickest in the world at building functioning power plants, and it takes them over 5 years to build theirs. The chances of Iranian society dragging itself along for 5 years without another solution to its energy needs are quite slim. In fact, tensions are already heightened, as seen in 2022 with the protests and the death of Mahsa Amini. This introduces another reason why Israel launched this operation when it did. Netanyahu has made it clear that he is hoping that internal instability in Iran could lead to regime change. Netanyahu has called for Iranians to rise up and overthrow Tehran's, quote, evil and oppressive regime. He has also stated that Israel is on the side of the Iranian people. This pursuit of regime change in Iran is further enforced by Israel targeting Iran's oil and gas industries. This will only worsen the Iranian energy crisis, which has seen blackouts occur daily. A thing of note related to this potential pursuit of regime change in Iran is that Israel and Iran aren't neighbours, so a ground invasion isn't going to occur. With this in mind, this is why Israel hopes that regime change would come internally. Yes, we've seen that Israel clearly has assets within Iran, as seen by Mossad launching drones from within Iran during the attacks on June 12th. And we also saw the assassination of Hamas leader Haniyeh when he visited Tehran last year. But for regime change to occur, getting close to Ayatollah Ali Khamenei would be the most difficult of these tasks, and it is unlikely to be successful when the Iranians are so alert. We also saw the United States reject such an Israeli proposal to target Khamenei a few days ago. Also on Friday, we saw the world's opinion towards this escalation between Iran and Israel when the UN Security Council met to discuss the issue. We saw Russia and China strongly condemn Israel's actions, while Pakistan stated that Iran has a right to self-defense. On the flip side, the United States and the EU also made their views clear, namely that Iran cannot be allowed to acquire nuclear weapons. So the world remains split on this issue, as expected. But after this discussion on Friday, we saw events in the Middle East escalate once again. Iran launched a second wave of missiles that also targeted Jerusalem this time. The Iron Dome was seen as active during this time, but some missiles did break through. The United States also reportedly helped Israel to intercept missiles, as did Jordan, as Iranian missiles flew through Jordanian airspace. It was confirmed that we had entered an escalatory spiral at this point, when Israel made its next move. In the aftermath of Iran's attacks during the day, Israel also launched a fresh wave of attacks against Iran on Friday evening. A short time after Israel's strikes, it was also reported that the IDF had intercepted a missile launch from Yemen. However, the Houthis have been dramatically weakened over the last few months by the airstrike campaign that was launched by the United States against them. And launches by the Houthis are now seen as more of a nuisance than actually causing damage. It was also on Friday evening when the Iranians confirmed the start of Operation True Promise 3. This involved more ballistic missiles, including the one that directly hit Tel Aviv, the video of which has been circulating a lot online. The Shahran oil depot in Tehran was also hit by Israeli strikes earlier in the day, and in response, Iran attacked the Haifa oil refinery in Israel, as well as the Weizmann Institute for Science in Rehovot. These attacks continued into the night and into Saturday, and restarted again on Saturday night. It's clear after these events, with multiple strikes being launched from both sides, that this is now in a state of all-out war. So, to conclude, the first key takeaway here are the reasons behind Israel's attack. Firstly, the ruling by the International Atomic Energy Agency that led to Israel's attacks against Iran's nuclear facilities. Secondly, we saw that Netanyahu had to once again appease his fragile coalition, and so war with Iran was the only way to do this. And finally, we've seen through Netanyahu's rhetoric that Israel wants regime change within Iran. The second takeaway is that this time is clearly different. In April 2024 and October 2024, we saw de-escalation occur very quickly, either through time between an initial attack and a response, or through the level of retaliation, which was typically de-escalatory in nature. This time, it's clear that we've hopped onto an escalatory spiral. So, next episode, I'll discuss the consequences of these last few days. Specifically, I'll discuss what is the big picture view here. I'll also explore the role of the United States and what effects we will see on the wider Middle East, before finally analysing potential scenarios that we could see unfold over coming weeks and months. So keep an eye out for that episode. That will likely be released on Friday. Until then, I've been Dylan. I'll talk to you next time.